2003 was a year of weather records. Britain experienced its driest start to the year since 1921, with no rain for more than a month in some parts of the country. Easter brought record heat of more than 27 degrees Celsius, causing chaos for our crops, but brought bikini-clad Brits out in their droves. Britain's beaches and parks were packed with sunbathers, ice cream vans became beacons of relief, and some Brits embraced the heatwave with typical good humour and plenty of sun cream.
People were just partying. I just remember all of my friends just always wanted to go out and be in the sun. I remember me just constantly layering the factor 50 on, thinking, oh gosh, I'm going to be out in the sun again.
I can remember being sent to do the weather from Bournemouth. I was so lucky to even get a room, because obviously I'm heading there to report on this heat wave that we're all experiencing, you know, and the beaches are rammed full of people, just so looking forward to enjoying their day.
I think I bought a children's paddling pool, and I'm pretty sure at one point, it was a really cheap one, and it wasn't very big, and at one point I think 4 of us were sat in a children's paddling pool. It was so hot, and I remember thinking, this is both funny and weird.
And it wasn't just Britain experiencing hot weather. Across the Channel, France had record-breaking temperatures of up to 111 degrees Fahrenheit, turning bustling cities into ovens and posing a severe threat to life.
There was a proper crisis in places like France. Thousands of people lost their lives because of the high temperatures. It happens in Greece as well, where I'm from. You know, we lose people when the temperatures get really high. 2003 was, you know, that first year in the 21st century where temperatures really spiked, and that had a big effect, even within countries where dealing with higher temperatures was something that people knew how to do.
J'espère que la température baisse un peu, parce que c'est vraiment chaud, comme Paris, il n'y a pas beaucoup d'espace vert, c'est vraiment chaud.
There's no question Europe really did suffer that year. Extreme values of people dying. We're very surprised with what happened that year.
Elle est quand même assez inquiétante puisque nous avons quand même énormément de problèmes.
In response to the deadly temperatures, governments across the continent declared the heatwave a public health emergency.
I did actually go to see my dad in Malta in 2003, and I remember leaving what was a very hot United Kingdom and then getting off the plane and it being even hotter in Malta. That sort of heat that hit you like a wall. It was like a physical reaction to the heat.
Think about it this way. We were seeing the hottest temperatures seen in Europe since 1540. That's around 500 years. That kind of puts it all into context, doesn't it?
That summer, a huge high-pressure weather system known as an anticyclone was positioned over Western Europe, preventing precipitation and leading to record-high temperatures both on the continent and in the UK.
An anticyclone is essentially high pressure. Now, when we get high pressure, imagine the surface of the Earth, high pressure's pushing down, and that pressure, if you like, is keeping rain, keeping clouds away, because the high pressure isn't allowing for that to happen.
It kind of stays and it sticks. And if you imagine, what happens is like a lid. So the air underneath it will get hotter and hotter and hotter and hotter. And so there's no lovely breeze to cool things down. So basically, you're stuck under this area of weather, just waiting for it to go, getting sweatier and sweatier.
Now, this was centred over Europe, which is where we saw even more extreme conditions to what we experienced here in the UK. And this kind of anticyclonic weather pattern lasted a really long time.
As June turned to July, the anticyclone covering mainland Europe was drifting westward and was about to set the mercury soaring in Britain once again. On the 14th of July, Britain braced itself for another heatwave, with much of the country breaking through the usually unachievable 30-degree barrier.
This is what we've got in store. I can honestly say there is not a cloud in the sky here in Worcester. It looks like today this is going to be the hot spot yet again. We're expecting temperatures to get up to 32 degrees.
Once again, Britain's seaside resorts were booming, with millions of us heading off to enjoy the sun. But for others less fortunate, the heat was beginning to make the working day a test of endurance.
Hot temperatures are tricky for the economy. Yes, pubs, beer gardens, supermarkets will do very well because they're going to be selling a lot of alcohol, maybe a lot of barbecues, a lot of barbecue food. But we also know that productivity drops.
There was no respite from the heat for many workers again today, whether outdoors or inside.
We were expected just to carry on regardless. Thinking about it now, we perhaps could work from home or we could flexi time. That wasn't a thing in 2003. Your job started at this time, it finished at this time, and you're expected to go in and do what you're expected to do.
Heat can be dangerous, and today the TUC call for industry and commerce to recognise maximum temperatures for workers.
In these temperatures, absenteeism goes up and productivity goes down. City analysts estimate that at 26.6 degrees, we're losing £38 million a day from the economy. At 32 degrees, that figure climbs to £132 million lost each day. And at 37.7 degrees, 100 degrees Fahrenheit, there are losses of £280 million each day.
I can remember being in the small office of the TV show I worked on at the time. When it was absolutely boiling outside, I can just remember that room being like, oh, like the worst sauna you can imagine.
We're inside in our offices thinking about what everybody else is doing outside. Oh my gosh, everybody else is out in the sun. You're looking out the window. Oh my God, look at them wearing those shorts. You know, we want to be part of that fun. Why are we inside? Why are we missing out?
Britain was sweltering, and with the demand for water up more than a third compared with other years, water companies in parts of the country were forced into taking drastic action.
The excessive demand left water levels at some reservoirs critically low, so engineers took the decision to shut off supplies.
One of the main reasons that we experience water shortages during times of hot weather isn't just because everybody is out watering their garden. That's part of it. But think of why you're watering your garden in the first place. It's because it hasn't rained enough to water your garden. So you're kind of picking up the slack where nature tailed off. But that combined with the fact that if water reserves are low in the first place, it kind of creates a perfect storm, if you like, of water shortage.
It's weird to think that in our country, with all its infrastructure, you could turn on the tap and, you know, just sand pours out.
Temperatures in Britain haven't soared so high since the summer of 1976, and water was a pretty rare commodity.
In response to dwindling water supplies, on the 23rd of July, the government of Jersey declared a ban on hosepipes, with fines of up to £2,000 issued to those caught breaching the rules.
We thought shortages, like water shortages, were part of the olden days, and it's 2003 with the new millennium, but we are running out of water. And that's when it gets frightening, I think, that when people can't turn a tap on, they suddenly go, I don't like this anymore.
These were the only taps working today, taps from a mobile water tank. And this on a day when temperatures were hitting 32 degrees Celsius, possibly the worst day of the year to be without water.
It was starting to get to a stage where it wasn't only an inconvenience, but this was really, really affecting people's lives.
The school is closed today because there's no water at the school either.
We had floods not that very long ago, and they can't cope, can they? I think it's disgraceful.
With temperatures continuing to rise, the NHS braced itself for significant pressure as emergency services dealt with a sharp increase in heat-related illnesses. Ambulances were stretched thin and hospitals were overwhelmed with patients suffering from dehydration and heat exhaustion.
Heat stroke really is the body's inability to regulate its temperature. That affects every organ in your body. When we get to a point where our body is so dehydrated and becomes so hot that actually we can't regulate, we can end up in serious trouble.
I think 2003 did concentrate a few minds, not only with the hot weather, but also from a health point of view. The heat stress, how it could affect people's health over a longer period of time if you get these hot conditions, which were day by day, week by week, and how you could really begin to suffer, and it could be really quite detrimental to people's health.
Sadly, that summer there were thousands of deaths that have been attributed to the heat wave, even if indirectly.
As well as the threat of heat stress and dehydration, Police and coastguards across the country warned members of the public of the dangers of jumping into open waters in an attempt to cool down from the heat.
I think it's quite timely to remind people that with the hot weather just coming, that no matter what your swimming ability is, that not to bathe anywhere which is not a designating swimming area.
Sadly, we did see a few casualties. One of the worst things about a heat wave is when people think they can just go and jump into a lake, because that water is still very cold compared with the feeling on your body. You might be going into the water with a temperature of 35 degrees and the body just can't cope with that sudden change in temperature at all.
As soon as it's hot, all we want to do is cool down, and we'll do anything that we can to cool down. It's a perfectly natural thing, and we tend to think of cooling down from the outside in. So that is go and stand where it's cooler, leap into cold water. So many people leaping into rivers and lakes and reservoirs during a time of heat wave, which unfortunately can have really tragic consequences.
With the country now firmly in the grip of another heat wave, bookies were eyeing up a weather record. And as temperatures continued to rise, bets were now being taken on the UK temperature reaching 100 degrees Fahrenheit for the first time ever.
We took one bet of £400 at 6 to 4 that we'd break the 100 mark.
I think 100 degree Fahrenheit sounds so exciting. I just think 37 point whatever it is in Celsius just doesn't sound as impressive. It's just a number. 100's like, whoa!
We had these mini heat waves that were happening throughout the year. We'd had that dry spell at the start of the year, and then in May and July we had little mini heat waves. So people were starting to get the idea that actually something's brewing. This isn't normal. Yes, we might be lucky to get a lovely Easter, but to have it again in July, what's happening?
When people started putting bets on the weather, you just know, gosh, Britain is a bonkers country, isn't it? The weather and betting, I mean, the two together, it's just a brilliant night out.
And it wasn't just bookmakers making a healthy profit.
It's been absolutely manic. Everything you'd expect that goes with barbecues has just been flying out the door.
By mid-July, there'd been 4 consecutive days when somewhere in the country exceeded 30 degrees Celsius, sending people into sunshine-seeking frenzies. The good weather was manna from heaven for Britain's supermarkets. Asda reported sales of barbecues increased by 200% and sales of barbecue meat up 400%, whilst Tesco expected to sell 15 million ice lollies, 4 million litres of ice cream and 250,000 bags of ice cubes.
You need to get in there and grab it while you can because you don't know how long it's going to last. So the supermarkets are running out of barbecue stuff.
You'd go to the supermarket and you'd see empty shelves. It was like there was a famine. It's like the world was coming to an end because you know what the British do? They get very selfish and they stock up, you know, like it's the war.
Predicting the weather, and particularly these kind of hot spells, is of vital economic importance to all kinds of businesses.
I was involved with a barbecue index with my colleagues at British Weather Services, and we put together this formula, really basically for the supermarkets and the producers of burgers. Everything had to fit into place. If you had the right temperature, good sunshine, not too windy either, you don't want your embers blowing around, ideally 23, 26 degrees, something like that. It's just perfect to have a barbecue. If it's too hot, you don't feel like eating hot food anyway, you want a salad. But the barbecue index worked very well until the next wet summer.
But just as July had us baking and barbecuing in equal measure, August was about to raise the stakes and show us we hadn't seen anything yet.
Britain is turning red, in some places redder than ever before.